and welcome to Real Estate Today. I'm Laura Harbison, broker-owner of Realty Executive Southern Nevada Properties, and I'm your host. And today I'm here with Matt Hennessey of Benchmark Mortgage, and we are going to give you all kinds of important information.
Hey, Laura.
Hi.
You know, most of our clients that would come to us, and you and I work with them over the years, that a traditional experience would have been going through a pre-approval process, maybe asking questions about, hey, how much do I qualify for? There's a new modern approach to this, and I think it's perhaps more important. It's doing this pre-purchase consultation. You and I embrace it because while it is very important to determine what somebody qualifies for a property, we found perhaps the most important question we ever ask a client in the very beginning is, Mr. and Mrs. Client, is there anything that keeps you up at night? Anything that you have concerns about while you would hold back from getting into the buying and selling part of real estate? And perhaps the most important question that is posed to us, or that concern is, maybe you hear this, maybe family or friends told them there was a crash coming, or they had, certain experiences. And I think
they saw it on social media.
Sure.
They saw it on Reddit. I mean, I had someone come to me yesterday and she had seen some little expose that the market is about to crash and all the foreclosures are coming. And I had to sit down and explain to her what the flaws were and what she had seen.
Sure. And it's a fair, emotion for the fact that there is a fear to hearing certain things and see if it's valid. But I always like to have comparisons between today and perhaps that most recent, history event, which we call the 2008 financial crisis. And so doing a little side-by-side comparison always, bodes well for a conversation to experience what was it like back then. And maybe I'll just kind of, sit back and say, you witnessed a lot taking place with your buyers and sellers leading up to 2006, 2008.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you and I were both in the thick of it. There was a lot going on, a lot of building, a lot of demand. It's all about supply and demand. There was a lot of demand, and the builders definitely responded to that. And were building homes like crazy. The lenders were giving loans like crazy. If you could fog a mirror, you could have a loan.
True.
Everyone was convinced that this was going to go on forever. So they didn't want to buy just one house. They wanted to buy 2 or 3 houses.
Sure.
And, when you're, working at the grocery store, you probably should not be buying 3 houses with 0 down payment.
Well, I think they all had, these builders have this build it and they will come mentality. True story is when I bought my first house, I remember doing new construction and it was a lottery system. You remember that? Because there was such high demand in the community. I was playing tennis for UNLV at the time and I was traveling. And you had to show up at 8 a.m. to get your ticket, right?
Oh, I camped out overnight more than once.
We did. And I gave my check. I said to my girlfriend, she showed up late. I didn't get the lot. True story. So there was a demand. And I think if you and I refer back to what we saw, builders built all these properties literally. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, they literally said they built the entire neighborhood and we just didn't build up. Maybe you had selections of flooring and perhaps cabinets, but everything else was pretty much done. Yes, if you got in early, you could have picked certain amenities, but what we noticed is if builders have this build it and they will come mentality, it's so important when we talk about the supply portion of it. Builders overbuilt nationwide to the highest level we've ever seen. And it's really imperative for us to do a little bit of data research to go back and say, well, if the average homeowner back then, leading up into 2006, was about 33 years old. So if we have to look at the demand side of it, if you go 33 years prior, it puts you kind of like in the middle of the 1970s. It's not like we want to bring politics or a disturbing conversation up, but that was the beginning stages of Roe versus Wade. And if you take a look at births during that period of time, there was a drop in individuals that were household births, if you will. So the demand of homes 33 years later was coming shy. So you built too many homes and then not enough individuals that were, ready to purchase a property. So at that point in time, you had many builders that had them sitting there. What took place then? Well,
and we actually had another phenomenon that kind of gave it an extra kickstart when we had 9/11, very tragic event. The nationwide consensus was, okay, we're in trouble, we're pulling back. And if you look at all the builders quit pulling permits, they quit building, they slowed everything down. People, assumed that, they assumed the worst. Well, because of that, they didn't keep their pipeline going.
Yep.
And again, everything is about supply and demand. So then the demand spiked for a period of time. But like you said, there's only so many people,
Yep.
right? And so we saw them just building like crazy.
Well, we've had plenty of our clients here in the media saying, oh, there's just not enough homes. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, when we saw too many homes in the market and individuals started to lose their value because Johnny over here remember, lending practices were so loose back in the day. So if you go back in history, mm-hmm. we had no documentation, low documentation, mm-hmm. no down payment, maybe interest-only programs. Mm-hmm. And what I like to call it, no skin in the game. Right. Because when individuals literally buy property for zero down, and if there are too many homes in the market and not enough interested home buyers who have the demand for them, value started to drop. And what does mm-hmm. the individual do? Well, I'm just going to let go of that property. And it just mm-hmm. accelerated the issue. So
yeah, well, for an example, obviously I specialize in the 55 plus communities, and I have for decades. So I was selling a lot in Sun City Anthem, mm-hmm. and they were only taking a small deposit, and people didn't have to pay anything until the end. And when the bottom fell out of all of this, people were just walking away from their deposits. I mean, literally, they had 67 cancellations on one day.
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And so everybody has emotion tied to those experiences. And mm-hmm. I think if we're on the same page, data tells us that for the next 14 years, builders underbuilt nationwide. Correct. Literally, we're still shy. And just hearing on the news here this morning is they anticipate that if builders built at the level they're doing now, we might catch up in about 7.5 years, but there's still about 4 million homes short nationwide. So mm-hmm. as more people are looking to form, my daughter goes off to college, you helped her, thank you very much for getting her into a property. Mm-hmm. But if somebody was to get married and they're going to have a household formation, there's going to be pent-up demand. Mm-hmm. And I think if we circle back, what has changed since then versus what it is now? Let's just start talking about the supply and demand. What do we see supply out here locally?
Yeah, we're still a little bit undersupplied. I mean, we're not like we were back when we crashed. I mean, again, using Sun City Anthem as an example, 7,200 homes. At the peak of the frenzy, we had 33 houses for sale. So that was like, right. That's when people were overbidding all this craziness. We don't have that now, but we do, we do have a relatively low supply compared to the demand. And then you've got people that are holding back somewhat because they're worried about interest rates and things sure. too. But so many people think there's going to be some sort of bottom out crash. And I'm like, well, we're undersupplied. We're not oversupplied. And if the interest rates do go down a little bit, that will increase demand because more people will want to buy, which makes the prices go up, not down. Sure. So,
and in the lending world, I mean, let's talk about it. If you used a great analogy, back then you could fog a mirror and obtain a loan. Mm-hmm. Sad to say. And if you look at the knee-jerk reaction, what we've experienced over the last, say, 20 years, if you haven't provided pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, mm-hmm. bank statements, DNA, anything to try to get into a property, the lending practices have tightened so much that it's so imperative for us to share with our clients. Getting all that done in the very mm-hmm. beginning is important, but having a deeper conversation of what the concerns they have mm-hmm. to make sure that we hear them, but most importantly is address, here's some facts mm-hmm. and data to support what was then versus a little bit different now.
Right. It helps consumer confidence a lot to know what's going on and understand the market and be comfortable in what they're doing. And then, yes, like you mentioned, giving DNA, firstborn, all those types of things. I had a client ask me yesterday, how does anyone get through this process? Because they want to know about a $6 bill. And I said, well, everyone, obviously, fair housing, they're going to treat everybody the same. Everyone has to provide the same information, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and if there's anything good that comes out of this is that lenders have to follow this thing mm-hmm. called the ability to repay. Today, mm-hmm. more than ever, we have to make sure that the client who qualifies for a mortgage qualifies today and in the future, not just, hey, you're fine today, but if the wind blows, gosh forbid, you're going to mm-hmm. lose the property in the future. So those are some very good points to make.
So if you have questions, feel free to call us. You can reach me at my office at 702-777-1234. And you can reach Matt
702-810-1522.
Yeah. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Real Estate Today. I'm Laura Harbison, broker owner of Realty Executive Southern Nevada Properties, and I'll see you soon.